Hey guys, Berger here with MVP Paintball. On this week's episode of Tech Tuesday, we're going to go over how to disassemble your Ninja Regulator. Alright, so everybody that plays paintball has some kind of regulator on their air tank. If you're using CO2, it's just a valve. If you're using compressed air, there's a regulator on there that regulates the pressure from your tank down to a usable pressure that your gun can shoot. This is a Ninja 4500 regulator, so it regulates the 4,500 pounds of air that's in my tank down to, I think I have this one set at 450 psi, so it's a low output. There's multiple times that you're going to need to service your regulator. If you're not comfortable doing any of this, please bring it to a certified airsmith. They have the proper tools and the proper training to actually take it apart and make sure that they hand it back to you safely. So one of the times that you're going to want to disassemble your regulator is if you get dirt in your fill nipple just from regular playing, if you don't happen to have a nipple cover on there. I use a Ninja magnetic one. I like them a little bit better just because they make a cool little click sound when you turn it on or when you put it on there. Other times that you might need to disassemble the regulator is if you blow one of your burst discs. These right here are safety discs so that if there's an overpressurization from either dirt and debris getting in here and damaging an O-ring or just normal wear and tear on it. Sometimes we want to take this whole thing apart, clean it all out, replace any of the O-rings if we have to, and replace the proper burst disc if one of them happens to blow. So there's a 1.8, which is 1,800 psi. It controls how much air is coming out of your bonnet. Your bonnet's the tip over here, and I have a thread protector on mine. Anytime that I don't have it on a gun, I always have my thread protector on there just so I don't damage the threads. So if the 1.8 blows, that's normally an indication that there's something wrong on the stem, one of the O-rings in there. The 7.5, which is on the other side, hopefully that never blows on you because you should never be putting 7,500 pounds of pressure into your tank. So normally if these ones go, it's probably just a bad burst disc. So up next, I'm going to show you how to disassemble it. Alright, so some of the tools that you're going to need to do this properly. You can do this while it is attached to your tank still. I'm doing it because I already had this one off. You can do it while it's attached to the tank. You just want to make sure that your tank is completely degassed before disassembling any parts of your regulator. So you're going to need a 3/32 Allen wrench, a 3/8 inch box wrench, and a 7/16. These are the standard sizes for it. For the Ninja ones, these will work. Some of the other regulators might have a different size on there, so just always test it. You can also just use an adjustable wrench. I just happen to like this one because I can do all of it at once. It's a good idea to have some lube with you. You do not want to use oil in your regulator. Adding oil into this when you fill it up can actually vaporize the oil and it can create a fire inside of your tank. That's not a good thing, so please only use some Dow type lube. One of the most common reasons that you're going to have to disassemble any parts of your regulator is your fill nipple. When you're out there playing, you get paint and sand and dirt and stuff in here, and then you go to get an air fill. All of that debris is in here, and when you put the whip on here and fill it up, it pushes all that dirt and debris through your regulator, which can damage your O-rings. So we're going to start off by removing our fill nipple, and for that we need the 7/16. Just put it on there. Unscrew it. These should never be Loctited or anything like that. They should come off relatively easy with a wrench. And in here we've got a stem with an O-ring on there, and then this is just the fill nipple body. So you just take a look at this O-ring that's on here, and you can replace it if you need to. Ninja has all the replacement parts. This one's actually pretty good, so I'm just going to leave it on there. I like to just use just a tiny little bit of grease on there. It's not really mandatory for these parts. I'm going to put it on there. I already have thread tape on here, so I'm just going to screw it back on. You just want to go hand tight with this. You don't need to to really wrench it down. Sometimes when you do that, the piston that's in there jams up against the valve body and it's not going to work properly. So just kind of hand snug it, put my nipple protector back on there. If you do need to take a burst disc off, these are going to use the 3/8, and these are on a little bit tighter. You do not use any thread sealer on here. Unscrew it. Inside of here is a little piece of brass. Just inspect it, make sure that there's no damage to it, make sure it's not bulged up or anything like that. And if there's an empty spot in there, it means that it blew. We're just going to install this back on there. And give it a nice snug. I'm going to do the same thing to the 7.5. Break it loose. Look in there. Just inspect it a little bit. Make sure that there's no debris in there as well. And tighten, and then snug it on. And again, no Loctite needed for these. No thread sealer needed for these. They actually seal when you tighten them up against the valve body. So every once in a while when you hear an air fill, when you're up at the field, whether it's your gun or somebody else's, you hear them doing an air fill and then you just hear this loud pshh, and it sounds like something popped and then a continuous stream of air. That's usually an indication that one of their burst discs popped on them. Common for that is if you get debris in the fill nipple and it damages an O-ring or something in there. So that's when you really know that you need to take apart your regulator further than just your fill nipple or a burst disc. Basically anytime that the 1.8 blows, I always disassemble the regulator just to make sure that there's no damage on there. If there's a broken O-ring or something, you're going to have to replace it. Otherwise, you put a new 1.8 on there, you're going to fill it up, and then once you get to 1800 psi in your tank, it's just going to blow that again for the same reason. So we're going to go ahead with the 3/32, and there's two little set screws here. We're just going to unscrew it. It's a good idea to have a tech mat too, especially ones that have indents on here. You can put little set screws and tools and they don't really roll away on you. Take that one off as well. I'm going to remove the thread protector. You don't really need to on this, but I'm going to anyway. So sometimes these will be stuck together. You can actually use a 10/32 screw. It's one of the grip frame screws on like autocockers and die guns and stuff, and you can actually put that in there to give you a little bit of leverage if you need to. But this one's pretty well serviced, so unscrew this. You're going to notice on this regulator, there's this silver strip right here. It's on both sides. It's actually not supposed to be there. What that means is that when this was put on, one of these set screws, or possibly both of them, backed out a little bit, and then when you go to unscrew your regulator from your ASA, because that's not in there tight, it kind of scrapes along here and does some damage. If you keep trying it while it's like that, you're going to eventually damage the threads up here, and then you need a new regulator body. So just always be mindful when you put these in to give them a good crank down. It doesn't have to be super hard or anything like that. Inside of the body, there are some shims, and that's actually how you regulate what your air pressure is, what your air output pressure is. That's a whole other episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the piston out. That's this piece right here. There's a spring on here. You have an O-ring here, two O-rings here, and then there's a nylon little ball here that actually seats up against a little pin that's down in there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to inspect these O-rings, inspect this one, make sure that there's no real big dents or anything or divots in this little piece. And then in here, there's a little ball, and this is what the air flows around. There's a little pin inside the ASA that pushes that down, which pushes down on that spring. That's why these mats are great, because I didn't lose that. So that's actually how the air comes out of the top. So we're just going to give that a quick look. No dirt and debris in this one. Take this, drop it back down in there. there's a little groove that sits into. Then before reassembling, I'm just going to take a little bit of my hater sauce, give it a nice little wipe. I'm going to do the same thing to the other piece. Oh, that's way too much. Put some of that back. Place the spring. We're just going to gently put this in, trying to align that spring in the ball. If you look right here, you can see that the ball's flush. This is in there tightly. I'm going to take the valve body, screw it back together. And you can look right down in here and you can see where the set screws should sit. And if you look down there and it's kind of like that, you're not seeing the indent from the old one. It means that you don't have it tightened all the way. Just give it a little crank and it should line up nicely on there. So we are going to replace the screws. Maybe if I can get this onto the Allen wrench. I like to just kind of hold it like this with my finger. That way as I put it in, screws in, just a little hand snug. You don't want to over tighten these. You can strip out the body. You can round the heads with it. So don't go too nuts with it. Just dropping everything today. Put that back in. Tighten that up. There's an O-ring down here. Like I said, you can do this while it's attached to your gun, or to your tank, I mean. But I have it off, so I'm also going to inspect the big thick O-ring right here. This is what seals up against your air tank. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to put a little bit of hater sauce on it. And I recommend putting some red Loctite on here when you actually reattach it to your air tank, and then don't pull it off of a gun, for probably 24 hours, because you could, as you unscrew, this could separate from the bottle, which creates a safety issue. So always want to make sure that that's not separating, and also that that is not separating from the valve body. So then what you would do is you just reattach this to the tank if you have it off like I do. If you bring it to an airmith, they can also fill up your tank and put this onto a output pressure tester and see exactly what your output pressure is. So there you have it, a fully disassembled and reassembled Ninja Regulator. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. If you want to see something else in one of our other videos, hit us up. Thanks a lot, guys.
2 hours later.
I'm going to cut there for a second. My throat's starting to get a little dry. I should have grabbed a water. That though. Thanks. My lighting look okay? Waiting for them to stop talking. And this is why we're waiting, guys, because we have some young kids in here for soccer shots, and that high-pitched little kid voice. You put the whip on here, you hit the